My introduction to Yu-Gi-Oh started back when I was a kid. I was introduced to the franchise in many different aspects, especially from the time that I was born, when Yu-Gi-Oh was becoming a far more popular thing. I remember watching the original anime a ton back in the day, playing the card game before the rules started getting more complicated, and enjoying many of the video games on the Nintendo DS and the Game Boy Advance, which I've covered many of those titles here on the channel in past video game reviews. So it's fair to say that I've been a massive Yu-Gi-Oh fan for a decent chunk of my life. But that being said, however, there is one piece of media that has always garnered so much hate and so much negativity that I wanted to kind of dissect that in a kind of non-traditional video here on the channel. The video, of course, being censored on the infamous Yu-Gi-Oh movie, Pyramid of Light. Pyramid of Light was a movie I've probably watched about a dozen times or so since my childhood, and this was a movie that I was extremely curious about to see how much people really enjoyed this one. I know I personally enjoyed many different parts of it, but to my shock, this movie is considered to be one of the most hated films ever produced, not just in the Yu-Gi-Oh series, but animated movies in general, to the point where it's received reception and just has a reputation like this. Negative reception of this movie really did surprise me. I've seen many different stats like 5% on Metacritic, it being the lowest rated animated movie on Metacritic until the Emoji Movie of all movies came out, Rotten Tomatoes having it as the second worst movie ever made, and just having all of these negative points brought up about it, and all the negative reception, not just from critics, but from fans in the community. I was extremely curious to go back and kind of see how this movie held up, and I'm here to tell you guys, upon reflecting back on the movie, and considering all of its good aspects and bad aspects, I don't know what everyone's talking about. This is actually a pretty good movie. I don't understand where all the hate comes from for this one. Now, unlike video game reviews that I've done here on the channel in the past, this isn't going to be a shot-for-shot review of Pyramid of Light. I am going to talk about things that I do enjoy about the movie, and a few aspects of it I will acknowledge aren't that good. But the whole point of this video is to delve into Pyramid of Light a little bit, and really tell you guys in like a review vlog fashion why this movie is still worth going back to watch, and it's not one of the worst animated movies of all time by any means. With iconic moments like this in the movie, with the fan service and the character interactions, how could anyone possibly hate this, especially from a character like Joseph Joey Wheeler himself?
Hi there.
Let's give him a checkup, Lily.
Say oh.
What the?
Before I praise any part of this movie, though, I know a lot of hardcore fans are going to be bringing up a lot of negative points as to why they don't like the movie, so I will acknowledge that this movie by any means is not perfect, despite the fact that I'm spending this entire video praising Pyramid of Light and talking about how it's not one of the worst animated movies of all time. It has many different shortcomings. Anubis isn't a very good villain. Honestly, he's probably a generic throwaway villain, never mentioned before in the anime, doesn't really pose too much of a threat, and he interrupts probably one of the most highly anticipated moments of this movie, which is the rematched Yugi Kaiba duel, which you hadn't really seen since Battle City in the anime. So Anubis wasn't a very interesting villain. Kaiba clearly should have won against Yami, by the way, too. While this duel is indeed tainted for a number of reasons because of some shenanigans from Anubis, using the Pyramid of Light trap card that Kaiba uses to destroy the god cards, and it really not being a fair fight, Kaiba was also gypped, which is another criticism of this movie based off the plotline. And I'm not gonna lie either, the pacing of this movie, the way that it's kind of, the whole buildup of this is bringing in Anubis as a villain, and then the Yugi Kaiba duel. Kaiba, regardless if he's under Anubis' influence or not, this was the main reason people were hyped for Pyramid of Light, was seeing another showdown between Yugi and Kaiba. But a lot of the shenanigans that goes on with Yugi's friends being sucked into the Millennium Puzzle, battling against Anubis' evil forces, and a lot of the weird and bizarre moments that were kind of just chucked in there to nerf the god cards, and a number of other really confusing story points. This movie isn't perfect by any means. The pacing's off, the villain isn't very good, and the Yugi Kaiba duel is tainted in many different regards. But I don't think that takes away from the sheer effort of this movie. I think that this movie accomplishes a lot, despite the fact it's not really canon to the main Yu-Gi-Oh anime. It is good in many different aspects. Although I will give you this one, despite my earlier praise of Joey in this movie, lines like this are very cringeworthy.
Want to get to the king of games, you'll have to go through me. The godfather of games, capiche?
And scenes with Taya like this one for some of the Side Anubis stuff.
Watch out!
What? I could do that. Let's take him apart!
Literally!
Excuse me.
Hey!
The animation in Pyramid of Light, I think, is extremely impressive, despite the fact that one of the main criticisms of this movie was also the lackluster animation style. For an early 2000s movie, guys, coming out in 2004, this movie is extremely well animated, with the anime art style that the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Is known for, and is still known for to this day. The dueling animations, the monster effects on screen, the character designs, the way that this entire movie plays out with the different attacks, spell and trap card animations, and especially during the Yugi Kaiba duel, these effects really do come out a lot. This movie is extremely visually impressive, and it even goes down to the detail where every single card that is played has an actual description of it, whereas in the anime, well, it's blank. You know, you're left to assume the effect based off of what the players say it is. But looking at footage like this, you can see the detail even extends down to the card effects themselves, the type of monster it is, how many stars it has for sacrifices. This movie is extremely detailed, and I think this is something that is extremely underappreciated. People look at a lot of half-baked elements like the bland villain and other story and pacing issues that Pyramid of Light has, but they ignore the animation aspect of it alone, because even though people may consider this to be a mid-animation style movie, it is still extremely impressive. And when it includes minor details like this from the real-world card game, you cannot ignore these aspects of Pyramid of Light.
Behold the Egyptian god card! Slifer, the Sky Dragon! Obelisk the Tormentor and the Winged Dragon of Ra! You've allowed me to assemble the 3 strongest and most feared creatures in Duel Monsters.
Now, addressing another one of the main complaints in Pyramid of Light would be the story and the characters, whether or not they're original like Anubis or from the anime like Yugi and Friends. I'm not gonna lie, like I mentioned before, this movie isn't perfect by any means. It's not a 10 out of 10 movie. That's not the point of this video. I will acknowledge that this movie, despite the fact I think it is very underrated, has many faults in the plot. But the plot itself is still a solid attempt at making an original Yu-Gi-Oh! Story, kind of trying to branch a gap in the Pharaoh's history between Battle City and Millennium World. So, even though Anubis isn't a very interesting villain, the plotline is still there. I like the solid setup of Kaiba wanting to find a way to defeat Yugi once and for all after being humiliated at Battle City, desperately going to Maximilian Pegasus to try and find some kind of card that can beat Yugi's Egyptian gods. And despite the fact that a villain from the Pharaoh's past, generic or not, interferes with the duel and slowly corrupts Kaiba in his thirst for power and revenge on Yugi, I do find it to be an interesting story concept. You get a solid duel between Pegasus and Kaiba, kind of bringing back some of that fanfare from Duelist Kingdom with the Toon World deck, and you see Kaiba's kind of descent into madness as he doesn't really care what the cost is. There's a brand new dragon, the Blue Eye Shining Dragon, so pretty cool design. Sorry for those of you who didn't get it in the theaters whenever this movie came out, when they were giving away promotional cards. I never had this issue, so sorry to you. But it introduces some new monsters, which are incredibly detailed, I think serve really well for the narrative, and the struggle between Yugi and Kaiba is pretty good. It's executed fairly well, with the Pharaoh trying to get Kaiba out of this dark hole that he's fallen in because of Anubis's influence, and the Egyptian god cards not being by his side in order to help him out in any way. The story isn't perfect, like I mentioned before, but it does have some good attributes to it, and the side stuff with Yugi and friends, they really don't have a ton to do in this movie. When the Pyramid of Light trap card is activated, their souls get sucked into the Millennium Puzzle. We have to fight off against a bunch of mummies that are trying to kill them, and ultimately try and end the influence of Anubis inside the puzzle by damaging an eye located in the Pharaoh's tomb. Admittedly, this is another weaker element of the plot. While I do think it's entertaining seeing these classic characters from the anime, and I've highlighted a few of these types of moments before, it isn't perfect by any means either. They really don't have a ton to do. It's just them running around the puzzle, trying to avoid mummies, and ultimately trying to help the Pharaoh from inside the puzzle. Not very interesting at all on that one, and I can definitely see the criticism on wasted potential within the story. But again, you do have some fairly entertaining moments present here too.
Yugi, you in here?
Yugi!
Talk later! Run now! What's with him?
The biggest issue that I see with Pyramid of Light, outside of it being a bland story or terrible animation and just being a horribly paced Yu-Gi-Oh movie in general, or animated movie for that matter, it's the interference with Anubis in what was supposed to be an epic moment between Yugi and Kaiba. And I will concede that while this duel is pretty good, and I've praised it a few times throughout this video, Anubis' interference definitely does taint the experience. Because what I wanted to see, what many other fans wanted to see, was a clean duel between Yugi and Kaiba using their base decks, their classic strategies and cards, no shenanigans, no eliminating the Egyptian god cards, no nerfing Kaiba with him being under Anubis' influence or anything else. This is supposed to be a good, clean duel. The rematch of the century. You know, we wanted to see these two iconic duelists from the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise duke it out after Battle City, which was arguably a pretty good duel in itself. So this duel is tainted in a few ways. Kaiba had multiple opportunities where he should have won. He makes dumb decisions present throughout the duel, like blowing up the Pyramid of Light, despite the fact that he had game when he could have just attacked with the Blue Eye Shining Dragon, because he had this perfect victory in mind to bring back the Egyptian god cards. He shouldn't have done that. And also Anubis interrupting the duel and completely throwing Kaiba out of the way. There are a number of dumb decisions made to give Yugi plot armor so he wouldn't lose to Kaiba and take down the bad guy at the end of the day. So, I will concede that, again, that this duel is not perfect by any means, and arguably it is pretty disappointing in a lot of ways they didn't try and have this epic showdown play out properly. But, at the same time though, despite the issues, this is still a pretty good duel, and it has some good moments chucked in there too, including some banter between Yugi and Kaiba. That's basically it to wrap up the video, guys. I've spent this entire time defending what is considered to be one of the worst animated movies of the past several decades, and a horrible piece of Yu-Gi-Oh media, receiving such low reception that I'm surprised people didn't take copies of the DVD and burn it in the street when this movie came out. Despite any of that, though, this is still a good Yu-Gi-Oh movie and a good animated film. While I will acknowledge once again that this movie has several issues that I've highlighted throughout the video, it is still impressive in so many other regards that it is not one of the worst animated movies of all time. It is a solid piece of Yu-Gi-Oh media that you can go and enjoy as a one-off. Despite the fact that it's not canon to anything, you can go and enjoy it as a classic Yu-Gi-Oh movie between Yugi and Kaiba, another chapter in the Pharaoh's story, and it's impressive in many other regards, despite the low negativity and criticism. If you're somebody who's turned off of watching this movie because you heard about people talking about it on YouTube, or you looked up the reception and saw this movie was so badly rated, what's the point in watching it? I urge you to go and check out the movie for yourself and develop your own thoughts. This is still an entertaining piece of media. This is not one of the worst animated movies of all time. This is a good movie, and I might be one of the few people to genuinely think that, but I still think that this is a pretty good piece of media all in all, and I'm not even the only one. My buddy Jesse from Nucopia Demon, he's the one who inspired me to do this video on a live stream of his, so he's shown up here on the channel in the past, so shout out to Jesse for inspiring this video I did to begin with. And he's also another fan of Pyramid of Light and was genuinely shocked on stream that this movie had such low ratings and reception. He also wasn't aware of all the hate it has. So thank you, Jesse, for inspiring this idea. And to those of you, again, who are in this camp where you do think that this movie is underrated, You are trudging through the battlefields, my friends. Keep on going. And that's going to do it for the video today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this one. Please, in the comment section down below, whether you're a fan or not, let me know what you guys think about Pyramid of Light, considering that this is an extremely divisive movie, and I'm sure people are going to have many different opinions across the board. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Do you love this movie that you watched during your childhood? Do you absolutely hate it and despise it from what you've seen of it? Do you think it's okay and you don't really feel one way or the other? What are your experiences with this one, and what do you think of its quality? Let me know all your thoughts and feelings down in the comment section down below. I'd love to see what the community thinks about this one. Otherwise, though, thank you guys once again for checking it out. If you want to check out my buddy Jesse's content, the person who inspired this video idea to begin with, check out his Twitch link in the description down below. He's a pretty entertaining guy, streams a lot of different types of games, and I think you guys would enjoy what he does over there, so feel free to check him out in the description down below. Otherwise, guys, if you did enjoy this as well, give it a like and subscribe if you guys want to catch future videos like this one. I really don't cover a lot of movies and whatnot, but we do a lot of retro game content, whether it be reviews, collaborations with other creators, unboxings. You guys know how the channel works at this point. Otherwise, though, thank you for checking this out. That's all from me. And until next time, this has been Ryan from the Nostalgia Factor saying, keep on gaming.